This morning, it was in my heart to take a little time to take one Sunday away from what we've been going through and just discuss a few of the attributes of love or the outworkings of love this morning. Because, of course, love is the area that Satan has done such a good job at perverting on the one hand, because love is in our day this all accepting, passive thing that you just don't really know how to apply. You just don't offend anybody, kind of thing, um, which is, of course, absurd. And, um, and that's not at all what love is like. Love can be extremely offensive if God is the one you're loving and the people are the one that are not being loved. Everybody's vying for love, right? Everybody wants to be loved in the way that they want to be loved. That's sort of the mantra of our day. And so the problem is you can't love God and the person under God that's related to you, either in the authoritative structures or through peership or just people in the world. You can't love them the way they want to be loved if by loving the person the way they want to be loved is in turn not loving God. You see that, of course, in Europe and the U.S. You see all kinds of situations uh, where people are angry about wanting to be loved a certain way, but in reality, you can't love them the way they want to be loved. And they say, well, that's not very biblical. I just read um, uh, a note from someone that I went to high school with, and you can tell they're just hurting or confused, and I don't know what's going on in their life. But I was just peeking in the window of the post and looking at it, and it's just the typical petulant mindset. It's not very biblical to do this or that, and we should all just get along, and we don't have to agree with each other, but we should just all love each other. Like, okay, let's just take that to its logical end. I'm out walking with my family at the mall. Someone attacks my family. I say, oh, I should just love the person and get along. Here, you can have my family. Take them, traffic them, enjoy. That's love, right? Right. In other words, it's stupid. Everybody knows it's stupid because you're loving someone, but you're not loving someone else. And so this is the dilemma in our world today where they'll let the legals come in and you love them, but then that same person won't take that person into their home. They want them into the country. They want for us to pay for them, but they don't themselves want to feel the implications of that. So there's a hypocrisy about it and a unrealistic mindset about what love looks like. And so love is one of the most misunderstood commands of God. And the attributes of love, of course, because Satan masquerades as an angel of light, and therefore his, I think, enjoyment is to pervert the concepts of love. It's on the basis of that love that, what was it, 12,000 people in the last few years have been put in prison in the UK because they said they didn't like something on a Facebook post, didn't like the migration or were against Islam or something like that. Do you realize that I would probably be arrested at the airport if I went to the UK at this point? If they were able to go through my stuff and see it and hear it, I would be arrested. So that's how bad it is because my messages would obviously offend someone. And so people have been put in jail for a few years at a time over this. And so that's where our world's going. In fact, you say, oh, that's the UK. It happened in Michigan where a guy went into a Muslim area and he was sharing the gospel in Dearborn. And the cops arrested him, and he ended up. The case went up, of course, and he won, of course. And they had to pay him out. They had to pay him a lot of money in order to get their hands slapped. But we're even in the U.S., people think, oh, it doesn't touch us. Yes, it's already here. It's at its infant stages. And so if you don't understand how to love, if you just think, oh, that's just don't don't rock the boat, don't cause any waves, then you're misunderstood. You obviously love is a lot is the manner of which you're doing it, and but that whatever it is you're doing, communicating, serving, comforting, encouraging, teaching, but but speaking the truth in love, as he says in Ephesians, speak the truth in love is one of those realities. And so that's it's this topic is just one of those topics that is so confused. But if I were to say there were three or four um, big ones, one is, of course, speak the truth in love, because people don't understand that. And largely, it's easy to convince yourself to be passive because most people don't like conflict, and therefore they will tend to not want to stir up trouble or cause problems or rock the boat because they don't want to lose friends. They don't want to, you know, be in an uncomfortable situation, something of that nature. Or they, even worse, they want to gain a friend or they want to keep a friend or some relationship. And so they tend not to want to offend and therefore convince themselves, well, it was better if I just didn't say anything. When you can say something, but in order to say something that's truthful, you have to believe it before you speak it. Because if you believe it and you understand it's not your job to convince the other person of it, it's just your job to stand in it. That's why he always says stand, 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 stand. Walk in it and stand in it. Walk in it and stand in it. Because walking in it and standing in it is just about me. It's not my job to convince anybody of anything. The Word of God is the power of God unto salvation, and the epinos, the true knowledge of Christ, is which we have everything pertaining to life and godliness. So I don't have to convince anybody. If they are saved and God's child, they'll learn the Word of God and it'll make sense to them and they'll apply it. And if they're being drawn and they humble themselves to the message of the good news, it has the power to save them. So I don't, there's no way I can convince anyone. So amping up when it comes to out in the world typically isn't always necessary, because there's not much I can do to change the person's disposition with just a mannerism. But what I find the most disruptive as far as an attribute of love, changing gears, is in 1 Corinthians 13. 1 Corinthians 13, you know the passage, most of you. It's the marriage passage. It's the funeral passage. It's, passage on love everybody turns to for some special occasion. You get these 15 verbs. Love is being patient. Love is being kind. It's verbs. It's the attributes of love. Love looks like this. Love looks like that. By the way, patience doesn't mean not being angry. And it doesn't mean not getting angry. It just means it takes a long time to get there. But I'm not focusing in on that, but I do want to read through them. And when we're done, we'll open up for some discussion on it, because it'll be good as long as we stick to the topic. It'll be good to talk through some of these things for the practical implications. Love is being patient. Love is being kind. Love is not jealous. It does not brag. It is not arrogant. It is not unbecoming, to act unbecomingly. It does not seek its own. It is not provoked. It does not take into an account a wrong suffered. It does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. Bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. So it's that last part that I find to be the most troublesome. If there were one attribute of love that I think is violated more than just about any other, that causes the most trouble, that leads to the failure of other attributes of love, it's love believes all things. And it's the concept of believes the best about the situation. This is where I find a breakdown happens in just about any situation. This is literally like weekly in my own home, when it comes to the kids, learning how to love each other. In the body of Christ, it's the constant in marriage. It's the number one problem. It's the number one. And it is so important to get this right because this is a baby thing. And if you skip this, if you don't take this seriously, you're going to handicap yourself. That's simple in life. You're just not going to have a happy life. Because if you don't believe the best about the situations or the conversations or the interactions, then you're left to only another option, to believe the worst. If you believe the worst, you're going to get emotionally unraveled, and then you're going to try to understand why the person treated you in a negative fashion, supposedly. And then you're going to go off and you're just going to think on that forever and ever and ever until finally you get into some tiff or you ask the question and then you realize they weren't thinking that at all. But by this time you're so worked up, you're convinced of it because of A, B, C, D, because you spent so much time thinking on why would they be upset at you and what would be the problem and blah, 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 blah. I know them very well. I know the way they think and da-da-da-da-da and all this BS, right, that happens in life. It's all nonsense. We're not mind readers. We don't know what's going on. We don't know if someone's having a bad time. We don't know if somebody's not thinking about anything we think they're thinking about. We don't know anything. And so I'm commanded, right? We have two commands. What are they? Faith and love. These are commands. They're not negotiable. Right? They're commands. One saves you, one guides you, and one is a command that Jesus expects to be followed at the highest level of commitment. That means that you have to apply your mind to understand how love applies in every area of life and seek to carry it out. And believe me, this is the one area that the Lord cares about the most. If my kids seek to love me and honor me as their father, and then I see them mistreat one another, their honor toward me and their, Dad, we love you, Dad, you're the best, Dad, whatever, thank you for the good things you give. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fine, thank you, I appreciate it, that's very sweet and kind. If I see them mistreat one another, I'm furious. Right? So I don't really care so much about how much they honor me. If I say, if you want to honor me, love one another, and I'll be super happy. In fact, my kids could probably never say anything positively toward me to my face, and I wouldn't care if they looked at me with a smile and loved one another accurately, keyword, accurately. I would be very happy. It's right for them to be honorable. It's right for them to speak honorable words. But it's not the more important thing. This is what Jesus was saying. As you treat others, you treat me, right? Because if you're kind to someone, you're kind to me. If you give to someone that's meaningful, then you're giving it to me if it's in my name. If you're encouraging someone, you're encouraging me. If you visit me, someone in prison in my name, you're visiting me. In other words, he feels the very emotional implications of the love that we give to each other. He feels it personally. And so this is obviously an important area. And love believes all things is so outreaching. It's so comprehensive. And it is something you have to master. Because no matter which flesh you have, whether it's the more outspoken or the more passive one, we all have to deal with this one thing. It's when somebody treats me in a way that is not according to the way I would want to be treated, or according to my cultural norms, or according to what I think ought to happen in the world around me, then it's easy to then immediately, my flesh is designed, like Satan's, to judge someone negatively, even if it's on the basis of a false pretense. It's assumptive. If you go back up to love is not arrogant. Arrogant is the assumption of knowing that, or thinking that you know something that you don't know and acting on it. Pride is holding to that. That's why pride's so stupid. Pride is the implications of standing on something that you can't verify. You know you can't verify it, but you're going to stand on it anyway. Arrogance is the assumption of knowing you know something when you know you really can't prove it, and when you're called on it, you're embarrassed, and so you get all, as Mary says, knickers in a twist. And so that's what messes it up. When we fail to believe the best about something our husband or wife is doing or saying, or the kids, or one another, or some stranger on the street, it doesn't matter if I perceive if I perceive that they're being rude. It only matters that I treat them according to the best option of what I believe could be a motive. See, that frees me up to enjoy my life. It heaps burning coals on their head because they know they're being loved, even if they're being a knucklehead. And God has to deal with them, right? I don't have to deal with it. It is by far the number one problem in, I think, most believers' lives today. This one topic of love believes all things, believes the best, is the concept. And you could add hopes all things in there, because it's a very close, almost a twin brother, twin sister kind of concept. Hopes all things would be hoping the best about a situation. But that could be something not relating to people. Believes the best is very, very person-oriented, because that's tend to be, I wonder why they said that. I wonder why they did that. Why are they late? Why are they early? Why did they do this? I can't believe they did that. Blah, blah, blah. And it's this constant bickering, only with yourself. Almost like to just satisfy yourself. And it is a satisfying in that every time I speak against someone, putting them down, even if I'm right, I feel better about myself. Right? So I'm feeling like thankfully I'm not there. Thankfully that's not me. That's one of the implications of it. Not that that's one of the only motives or satisfaction sort of feelings. It's like eating chocolate, right? As long as I can see something and condemn it, and I instantly have a dopamine, vibe going on with myself. I both feel angry about it and satisfied about it at the same time. And so this is a very important thing to understand. It is believes all things. It's just, it's insanely practical. The amount of time I've spent on counseling situations between people concerning this one topic, and just sitting there going, yes, but if you believe this, everything goes away. If you believe this, everything goes away. It's happened so many times. Every single week, this one thing. And it astounds me that this thing repeats itself. It should never repeat itself. This is a mastery that every child of God has to get down quickly, because it's so freeing to your own spirit. It's so joyful to live in a reality where you trust the best. And somebody said, well, that's being naive. No, it's not. If somebody says to me, Greg, I'll take you home, but I can perceive that they're drunk or that they're intoxicated, or maybe they just look that way. And I say to them, well, it looks like you're intoxicated. And they say, no, I haven't had anything to drink. Well, it to me looks like, something's going on there. You may want to take a rest. Oh, no, I'm good. I can drive you home. I say, I trust you. I trust that you haven't had a drink because you said that. And I trust that you believe you are well enough to drive. However, from my perception and my personal protection of myself, I'm not going to put myself in that situation. I'm, sorry if that offends you. But the reality is, it's for me to care for myself and make decisions that I believe are best for myself. So to believe the best and still make a decision that's best for you is still a proper thing to do. And that might be offensive to the person, but it doesn't matter if you believe that that is what is necessary for the protection of you or your kids or your wife or your husband, whatever it is the situation is. Believing the best doesn't mean you have to argue with the person and win the battle. You have to convince them the reason why I'm not going is because you in fact are intoxicated somehow or another. I don't care what they believe. I believe them. If they believe they're not intoxicated, I believe they believe that. I also believe that I could be wrong. Maybe they just haven't had a lot of sleep. Maybe they're having a mild stroke. I don't know. It's not my business to know. Who knows, right? It's for me to just make a decision on myself. That's what it means, stand. In other words, stand and make a decision. To love somebody is just to accept the reality of what they're saying, but that doesn't mean I'm going to make a decision off the basis of that reality. Does that make sense? In other words, I might go to the market. Let's use an absurd illustration. And I say, I want to buy some steak, and they cut it off of a pork. And they say, no, this is steak. I say, okay, if you believe that, you're in error. But I do believe you believe that because you're saying it with such confidence. However, let me talk to your manager so he can educate you on the difference between steak and pork. Right? In other words, I'm not stupid. Believing the best doesn't mean I go along with it and we play a game. It means that I believe the best about the situation. The person's ignorant, uninformed, worst case scenario, they're in some sort of mental impairment. They shouldn't be working there. Yeah. But the reality is I still have to believe the best, that the person's not trying to deceive me, not trying to be this malicious person. They're just doing what people do, whatever it is. But I still make my own decisions. Trusting the best allows me to evaluate whether or not the person is worthy of going along with in some way or another or not, worthy of continuing the counsel or not. It allows you to see if they're rational or not, because you're trusting the best about the situation. It could be anything. We joke about, Mary and I joke all the time about cars, cutting you off. And I was going over to Margaret's and I was laughing because I don't think I've ever been on the roads that I was on and people went 20 miles under the speed limit, sometimes 25 miles under the speed limit. And I was like, this is getting to me. Like I can handle 10. And I have to take a deep breath, relax, and I just settle in, I'm like, we're on the long drive. We're just going to add 5 minutes to the trip. No big deal whatsoever. But when you dip down into, you're on a 50 and you're going 25 and there's no passing thingy, all of a sudden everything gets a little itchy inside, You're like, are they having a stroke? Are they trying to survive? Like, what's going on with them? Yeah, I mean, they just, they just scrolling, and they're going at a safe, speed. So if they wreck, it's not such a bad experience. I mean, I don't know what's going on. But Beth and I were going to Margaret's the other night, And I was just laughing. I was like, it is the first time, maybe in, I don't know, 25 years, I actually honked a horn. Yeah. But it was like just a warning, just like a honk honk. Like maybe they don't realize that it's a 50 mile an hour and they're going 20. Maybe they, so I just like a little tap, just a little love tap, bump, bump, not big, not a big offensive thing, a little love tap. I know. Beth was like, "Did you just honk the horn?" Like, because that's like never happens. I'm usually the most chill person ever, and I just kind of accept the circumstances. And so, but it was like, I'm still in my mind. I'm still trusting the best about the situation, whatever it is. Maybe they're just intimidated by the weather, even though it was just sprinkling, or maybe they're looking for a friend's house and they're going slow as people do and they're looking for a place, whatever. So eventually I found a place to get around them and I went on around and I was like, wow, that's crazy. And then we got to the next little section of road that we were on and another person. I was like, thank you, Lord. Obviously, we're just piling them up. Any more? Any more? We need an endangered turtle to get in front of me and just like crawl forward and not go across the street. So it was funny because we were like on the way and it was just everybody was cutting the speed limit in half. Like I said, it's one thing, 5 or 10 mile an hour, no big deal. 25 mile an hour, that's completely irrational, you know. But rather than, thinking negative thoughts about the person, I think positive thoughts and then seek for a solution. Even if the solution is, oh, well, I'm stuck. And think of future solutions like that beautiful arm that I've always dreamed of on the front of my car. That when you get up close, if they're going too slow, it just sweeps them off, and you just keep going. And I don't know why that hasn't been invented yet, but like, oh, what was that? I don't know. I'm thinking the best the whole time, but they're out of the way now, so it's no big problem. That'd be a bestseller, wouldn't it? One for the front and the back for you, huh? Just in case. No, but it's funny. Like you still have to exercise, even though you have a dilemma in front of you. Regardless of the dilemma in front of you, your mind should be captured, taken captive by the truth of, okay, I'm going to believe the best about this circumstance. And there's always, you'll be amazed at how skillful you can get at believing the best about something. Again, that does not mean that you continue with a person. It does not mean you stay passive in your speech. In the very text itself, it says you rejoice with, you don't rejoice in unrighteousness, but you rejoice in the truth. All right? If I don't rejoice in unrighteousness, if somebody tells me something and it's something they know that, or at least I think they should know that I don't want to hear, then I can tell them, oh, this is something that I don't want to hear. I can, at that point, assign a motive. They did it to, harm me, to mentally disturb me, to tempt me, to whatever it is. Or they're just being them. There's a difference between believers and unbelievers, right? Unbelievers do what unbelievers do. Unbelievers do not have a love of God in their heart, so they cannot love you. They can give you a phileo effort, but usually phileo effort is often based upon whatever circumstances are in the situation. So it's conditional, often. And but they can't give you agape love, so they can't give you this unconditional, wonderful love that you're offering someone. They can't believe the best about you. They can't want the best for you in the way that God would. They might want the best for you in the way a human would, but not the way God would. So they can't believe, they don't have the love of God in their heart to offer it to you. That means they're not going to rejoice in the truth. They're going to rejoice in unrighteousness. Remember, the world finds unity in what? One word, huh? Negativity. Why? Because they can't find it in positivity. If you go to any sport venue, everybody's cheering together on the same team. But if you were to discuss with the person next to you which player you like better, the one you think's the best, you're in a fight, right? Which quarterback in the era of whatever era you're in compared to one other in a different era, who's better, you're in an argument. But if you both criticize, then we're now unified. So people find joy in negativity because it's a safer place to be in the world. The world finds unity in negativity. Can you believe? Can you believe? That's why the news is always negative. The news is not a positive place. The internet is not a positive place in general. It tends to be a negative place because you don't get clicks unless there's some wow moment. Oh no, can you believe this? Oh my goodness. What's going on? You have to have a, oh no, look at how awful this is. Look at how horrendous. Look at how untruthful. Look at how terrible this is in order for someone to go, oh, click, well, I want to see that. If it says, the truth about something, then it doesn't really matter. If it's a positive thing, it's not necessarily important. But if it's a negative thing, well, then people will run to it. It is human. That tells you something about the human condition. The human condition finds unity in negativity. And so I know this. Because I know this, I now have wisdom the world doesn't have. I understand their reactionary methods. That means I can catch it, spin it back, and kick it out. I don't have to give in to it. Can you believe such and such, so forth and so on. There might be a time to say, yeah, that's a terrible thing that happened, and I agree. But then you have to spin it in such a way toward godliness in your expression to where that makes them feel uncomfortable at some point. At some point, even though I might begin agreeing with them, if they're not a child of God, eventually they often are going to feel very uncomfortable by the end of the conversation. Because I'm not going to let their then pretenses on their attack on the motives. If I start defending, well, we don't know that. 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 Then somebody's like, well, what are you supporting them? Like, no, I said I agree. But I'm not arrogant. No one's a mind reader. You don't know. And everything you think you know, you don't know. In this world, Satan is the author and master of disguises. He is the one who masquerades. That's what a masquerade is. It's a mask. And everything in this world that's going on is just under a mask. So if you think you know what's really going on, you really don't. And so when it comes to the individual life, it's the same thing. They did that because they just don't care. Or they did that because of this reason or that reason. It's like, oh, okay, so you know this to be true? Well, why else would they do it? There's lots of reasons why someone would do or not do something. And I could come up with maybe 10 good reasons and 10 bad reasons. We could go back from their development to their training to whether they're informed, whether they're ignorant. We can go to wrong presuppositions in the truth, like a Romans 14 situation where someone's worshiping God in an inappropriate way, but they're doing it from faith. Even though it's wrong, God says he accepts their faith, and therefore they just need to be encouraged and taught properly so as to correct their behavior. There's all kinds of reasons why someone who's a child of God would do something that's from a good place, even though the things they're doing don't look like the most profitable or loving or wise or good thing to be done. So it's not a matter of their behavior as much as it is you having to examine yourself concerning what your beliefs are, concerning what their motives are. And you have to assume the motive is good, not from an unbeliever. Is there any good in an unbeliever from an agape standpoint? No one is good, no, not one. No one understands, no one seeks for God. No one is righteous, not even one. So if no one's righteous and no one does good and they only seek their own way, the unbelievers, I can assume that they have a fallen motive. But that doesn't mean that it's a terrible, awful, horrible motive. because unbelievers can love each other. Unbelievers can do kind acts. Unbelievers can be ignorant and misunderstand. Unbelievers can be in trouble and need to get somewhere. Unbelievers can be in situations that aren't bad thoughts on their part, bad motives on their part, and do the things in life that we see, oh, that looks terrible. But is it? It's for me to first believe the best and let them prove themselves out of that. That's the very bedrock of our society, is that someone is innocent until proven guilty. That's this wisdom. The innocence until proven guilty. That's not about the deed. The statement they're innocent until proven guilty has nothing to do with the actions that take place, right? One person kills another person. Was it self-defense? Was it mutual combat? Was it murder of the first, second, or third degree? Right? So that's what you're judged on, the basis of the motive, not on the basis that one man killed another man. That doesn't send you to jail. That's not good or bad. The issue is, why did you do it? Right? That says, okay, two people kill each other, we're just going to assume you're innocent. That is not the way this society functions, because the society by nature finds agreement in negativity. And so people want to assume in their flesh and with their vigor that you are guilty until proven innocent, rather than innocent until proven guilty. But the founding fathers, no, you're innocent until proven guilty, because that's the only way to maintain a rational thought. The only way to maintain a rational thought is to assume the person is innocent until proven guilty. And so when it comes to the child of God, no matter whether they're lost or saved, I assume they're innocent of a bad motive until proven guilty. You think of the Muslims that even blow themselves up. In their mind, are they guilty of evil? No. That makes me feel sorrowful for them. That makes me feel sympathy for them. It makes me hate what they're doing. And some of them are filled with hate. But they were taught from the little kids that this is a good thing. This is honoring God. This is killing bad people out in the world. These bad people who deserve to die. This is the way all cultures think. Even our culture thinks the same way. Our government is the greatest serial killer probably the world's ever known. Because somehow we have to have justifiable reasons to kill somebody in our justice system, but our government can do it at will and call it collateral damage or a necessary thing without any implications whatsoever, without any, there's supposed to be the world courts that's supposed to keep people in line. Yeah, that works. It's a joke. With all that stuff that's going on, my job is to believe the best, which, by the way, is offensive to people who are bloodthirsty to believe the worst. It's offensive to believe the best. People get mad at you. Like I said, they'll call you naive. They'll call you a part of the problem. No, you're not part of the problem if you still stand against evil. Like I've said, in relation to Islam, it's by far at this point the worst religion in the world. It's horrible. And as far as a religion's concerned, because it's a murderous, oppressive, horrible one. However, it's hard to compare with some of the other ones that are more sneaky and oppressive and keep you ignorant, make you feel comfortably saved, and yet keep you lost. But from a social standpoint, Islam is the worst. It's a happy little tool in Satan's toolbox that he enjoys implementing in the world. But with that, still with me and how I function, I have no problem believing the best about someone's actions and still punching them in the face and putting a bullet in them if I have to protect my family. I have no problem, right? I can say, they were taught that way. They're still going to die at my own hand, and I have no problem doing it, right? So I can both love them by trusting the best and protect my family and put them to death if they were to be aggressive to my family, right, or myself. And so trusting the best doesn't mean you're vulnerable. It doesn't mean you get into the car with the person just because they look a certain way. It doesn't mean that you put yourself in a compromised situation. Trusting the best means that you're admitting that you don't know the motive and the intent behind the person. And because of that, you're saying, I'm gonna assign a motive, because that's what we do. Very rarely do we go, I wonder why they're doing that. Okay. Our mind immediately has to assign a motive to feel justified about our anger or our acceptance. So we find a motive, good or bad, and we will assign it. And most of the time it's negative. And from that negative one, if that doesn't satisfy me, then I have to add to it. I have to bounce around with it and keep finding more negative things. And then I have to accentuate the negative motive into, now, what would justify that motive that I have now deemed to be true? Well, the motive would have to be backed up by this level of philosophical thinking. Well, what's the thinking of our day? Well, the thinking of our day is this. Therefore, they must be this way of thinking in order to do this action, because that's very similar to the way other people think who do that action. Therefore, that must be that person, and now that person's there. So now you've built a straw man. The person is deep down into the morasses of your mind. They're gone. So if you were to try to have a rational conversation, you couldn't. Not because of them, but because of you. But because you've believed a lie and believed another one and another one and another one. And somewhere in the midst of a conversation, if you were to have one, you might find one speck of truth that you got right. You go, ha ha ha! Ha ha! I was right. Well, maybe a little, and maybe not. Maybe you're dealing with one of those people, I deal with it all the time, that will say that they're guilty just to end the argument. In fact, it's like an epidemic in our day, because people are less intellectual than they used to be. They tend to just want it to be over. Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. I was wrong. Rather than going, is that a correct assessment? Let me search through and figure out who I am as a person. Let me properly understand myself, and let me see my negative things about myself, and let me see my positive things about myself. Let me clarify my stance or my stand about myself. And by doing that, now you communicate, and two people gain understanding of one another. Of course, you should defend your integrity. The other one is in Romans 12. Romans 12 is one of my more favorite areas of love. One of my favorite to talk about is love without hypocrisy, but that's not the one we're going to talk about today. Even though that one is wonderful. It falls into the category of the humorous concepts of love. Like I said, the grandma knitting the sweater, or somebody throwing you a birthday party for you, but it's really for them. You know, that kind of thing. And so that's fun. Abhor what is evil, cling to what is good. Very similar to, rejoicing in righteousness and hating the truth. Rejoicing in righteousness and truth and hating unrighteousness. And he goes on, be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor. That one. That's the sneaky one. Give preference to one another in honor, because this is something that, again, in my own family, I've been raising my kids in these truths their whole life. Somehow, magically, they still haven't mastered these things. Giving preference to one another in honor. And it's amazing to me, if you find a selfish and foolish person, they'll say, yeah, they're not giving preference to me. That's not the way giving preference to one another in honor works, because two people want the preference given to themselves, right? So the question is, which person gets preferred? It's a simple answer. The one who's more affected. The one who's more negatively affected. If somebody, we're going out to eat together somewhere, and I say, where do you want to go? They say, well, I don't care. I say, well, I'll go over here. Well, they say, I don't really want to go there because I'm allergic to peanuts or something. It's like, okay, sweet. We won't do that. Right? You're more negatively affected. In other words, we'll go to where I can find happiness just about anywhere. Just about, I said. So there might be a rejection on my part. But because somewhere out there, there is a place we both enjoy. When it comes to, like I said, in the home, when Beth and I first got married, and she came into my house, which is a dude's house. She wanted to make it a woman's house, and I was like, okay, there's woman rooms, and then there's our rooms, right? Our rooms we both have to like. So we're both going to give preference to one another, and somewhere it might not be what you like, and it might not be what I like, but it'll be what we like, and we can find preference together, and we will honor one another and give preference until we find a common couch, a common chair, something we both enjoy. And so that's the way giving preference to one another in common areas works. If I were to give preference to her in her parlor, then I would say make it however you want, unless it's a clown room. But even then, maybe so. I just don't ever have to go in there, right? And of course, if it's a women's parlor, she probably wouldn't want me in there. Give preference to one another in honor. Again, if you can, common thing, right? It's late. Somebody's winding down. The lights are down, and somebody just cuts on the lights, nice and bright. But you can still see without them being cut on to walk in a path. But one person is negatively affected by it. And you're not really negatively affected. You just prefer to have, a nice bright environment. Who's more negatively affected? The person who wants the nice bright environment, or the person who's winding down and trying to get into that sleep mode? One winding down. So that means love goes toward the direction, the logical direction of the person who's more negatively affected. This ought to be the simplest of truth. This is like, duh. It's so stupid. It's insanely, it's insane how simple it is. And yet, somehow, this is like one of the main things in counseling. Well, they didn't. It's like, this should never be something in counseling. This is literally childlike information. Someone's more negatively affected, and therefore, they're the ones that you prefer. Unless it's an extenuating circumstance, which there sometimes are. Right? And so, it's simple, but yet so profound. Because it means that you're mentally aware of the circumstances of the people around you. And love, they may never know that you had a desire because you just choose not to violate. If you know this person, if you don't know them and you cut on the light, say, and they go, oh, my, would you mind turning that off? Da, 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 da. Oh, sure. I can still see. Or do you go, well, I prefer it to be brighter in here, blah, 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 blah. It's like, which one is it? Well, obviously, it's the one who's more negatively affected. So your goal in life is to love people off the basis of an understanding, which is again the most concept. That means I'm not always if I'm around human beings, that means that I'm not always going to get my way. Oh, poor me. Selfish little Greg's not going to get his way all the time. That means I'm going to be uncomfortable sometimes because the other person will be more uncomfortable. I'm not going to get what I want to eat sometimes because the other person might be allergic or just gets grossed out by something that you enjoy, right? And so whatever, right? Whatever the situation is. And I want to take questions and talk about each one of these, but I want to finish the last point and then we'll go backward and we can talk about it. The last one is, again, in Romans 12. That's just to point out. Again, I could pick some more that are pretty obvious and maybe we could, but I'm speaking in terms of, in the body of Christ, the three that I see violated the most and are the most troublesome in the body of Christ from a disruptive manner, like things that disrupt the happiness and the joy and the peace of life. The kingdom of heaven is about righteousness, joy, and peace. And you want to destroy righteousness, joy, and peace? Just believe the worst. That will wreck it. You want to wipe out righteousness, joy, and peace? Don't give preference and honor. Again, it doesn't say respect, does it? It says give preference to one another in honor. You're honoring the person as they are, as they're just a peer. If they're a wife, then they're under you. You're honoring them according to the position. If they're your kids, you're honoring them as children that God would want to be loved. As peers, you honor them as joint heirs of the grace of life. That doesn't mean that you, again, somebody might want to share error. You don't give them preference on that ground because that's not a preference issue. That's a truth issue. But I've heard these arguments when people are like, I'll mention a truth like love believes the best. Like, yeah, you're not believing the best about me. Well, it's because you've already exposed your motive, and I'm telling you from your own mouth what you've said, right? Or you're not giving me preference. Of course we're not, because your preference is not the one that should be given. Your preference is selfish compared to the need of the moment. The last one is verse 15. Rejoice with those, this is Romans 12:15. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Simplest thing. Righteousness, joy, and peace. The kingdom of heaven is about righteousness, joy, and peace. Simplest thing in the world, to choose to be quiet and just rejoice with someone. I'm happy for you. Even if you would have made a different decision. Even if you think that was a dumb decision. We tend to feel hypocritical if we rejoice with somebody but we wouldn't make the same decision, or if we believe that they made an unwise decision. I can't say that it was wrong, but if it was unwise in my mind, you feel hypocritical if you rejoice with them, and it's not hypocritical. It's a command of Jesus Christ. Get that word in your head, a command to say, I'm happy for you. And truly rejoice with somebody for living in a way that's subjective, that they want to live, to buy the things they want to buy and do the things they want to do and make the decisions they want to make. Even if you think they're stupid and unwise, it doesn't matter. Your job, your command of Jesus Christ is to rejoice with them. See how easy that is? I'm happy for you. That's great. How do you like it? Where are you going? How are you going to be gone? Blah, blah, blah. You just be happy for them. That's not so hard. It's hard because people feel like they have to give, the reason why they think that was stupid. They're not invited. If somebody doesn't invite me, and even if they do, I listen to the tone of their voice to see if it was a real invitation. What do you think about this? That's not a real invitation. That's please patronize me. Right? What do you think about this bad boy? If I say, well, it's stupid. I just watched a video on when the crap hits the fan, what ammo not to have. The 7 ammos not to have. Because if you had to grab your grab bag and run out and get a weapon and ammo, what weapon should you have and what ammo? I was just curious, right? I love to see these opinions and this stuff. But it's like, if that's a video saying, yeah, you're stupid. Right? You're dumb for getting these. But if somebody were in an apocalyptic situation and they grabbed the 50 cal, right, and they had those, you're not going to find those bullets everywhere, right, laying on the ground. You're not going to find stockpiles of that stuff. But hey, I would rejoice with them. Hey, happy for you. Whatever you hit will stop moving, in a weird situation. No, there's just a silly illustration of, be like, if they're happy, I'm happy for them, Whether it's the car they buy or the house they get or the things that they wear or the things that they eat or the places that they go. It doesn't matter whether I think it's wise or unwise. It doesn't matter if I think it's the best use of their time. It's just their decisions. It's what they want to do. So I rejoice with them. I'm happy for them. By choice. I have my opinions, but I don't want them to know that I have my opinions, because I want them to be happy, and I want them to feel supported in their decision making. I don't want them to know that I think it's maybe not the wisest decision. Funny illustration on that is well, just skip it. But no. It says, weep with those who weep. This is another one. Rather than weeping with those who weep, we tend to feel like we have to give them some reason why we feel it's hypocritical for us to weep with them, because we feel like they hit their own hand with a hammer and they were stupid. Well, you did it to yourself. Right? You did it to yourself. So I can't really weep with you. I feel like smacking you upside the head. I hope you learned your lesson. Right? But you can say the second part in some respect. But you need to weep with them first. Like, take the time to comfort the person. Take the time to weep with those who weep. Take the time. If you want to give them encouragement, you want to give them truth, you want to give them wisdom, fine. You want to joke around, you want to have fun with them if they are that level of friendship, fine. But first take the time to be compassionate and weep with those who weep. Because this is the command. We live in this beautiful thing called grace, and so we don't live by law, but we do live by the law of faith and love, and these are commands. We are obligated to Jesus Christ to excel in the area of love, and these are the three that I find, the three areas I find to be the biggest pain in my hindsight. Like, I would literally have probably years of my life back that I could have to myself and do whatever I want to do with it if I didn't have to counsel people for the hours and hours of listening to them try to justify why they're okay for believing the worst, hoping the worst, for not rejoicing with those who rejoice, not weeping with those who weep, for those who would not give preference to one another. These are the baby areas of life. These are the beginning stages. That's why he says, no matter what you do, you're just a noisy gong and a clanging cymbal without love, because it just doesn't make life happy. It doesn't. You might feel justified, but I guarantee you this, you'll never feel happy, and you'll never feel good in the relationship at the level that you should if you don't practice, to say, obey these commands. You have to force your flesh to grow in love as a basis. It is so important. It is so rewarding because the outcome of growing in love is truly what he says in Romans 14, righteousness, joy, and peace. It is. It's peaceful. If you believe the best, it instantly puts you at a peaceful place. If you are in a state where you're giving preference, you know you've loved, even if the person doesn't know that you loved them, because you didn't proclaim it. Like, well, I really wanted the lights on, but I'm turning them off for you. Yes, I'm going to proclaim it so that all my treasure in heaven gets flushed down the royal toilet. Jesus said, if you're going to love somebody, do it in secret. Don't proclaim it from the housetops. Give preference to one another in honor and keep it zipped, right? They don't need to know that you loved them. You know it. God knows it. He says he rewards that. That's special between him and you. God knows that you have an opinion and you might have more wisdom to somebody, but he's so happy that you would just rejoice with them. He's so happy that you would just weep with them. God knows that you have the wisdom to see that someone might be foolish and their understanding of the reasonings behind what they do, but if you believe the best and let them prove that out in time, God and Jesus are happy with you because that's what they require of us. This is the command. It is the prayer of Philippians 1, 9 through 11. It is the command of 1 John, the command of Jesus in John 13, right? Love one another as I've loved you. Jesus wasn't dismissive of the disciples' evil behavior. He called it out. He spoke truth to them. But we don't get to see all the attributes of love from Jesus' life. We just have a very small bit of what he did and what he said. And so he fills in the blanks for us as you read through, again, as you read through 1 Corinthians 13, Romans 12, he's filling in the blanks. If Jesus were here and he were fellowshipping with us and he were trusting in our walk of faith, how would he treat me? Well, he would rejoice with me. He would endure with me. He would weep with me. He would trust the best. He would treat me that way. He would give me preference and honor, and I wouldn't even know he's doing it. That's the way the Lord would work. And I know that because that's what he said is important to him. This is the way love works. So with